मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथो मद्गुरुः श्री जगद्गुरुः मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा कृपालु गुरवे नमः। मधुर मधुर मेतन मंगलम मंगलानां सकल निगम वल्ली सत्फलम चित्स्वरूपम सकृदपि परिगीतं श्रद्धया हेलया वा भृगु नरवरमात्रं तारयेत् कृष्णनाम। नमः कमलना भाय नमः कमल मालिने नमः कमल पादाय नमस्ते कमलेक्षण यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। Dear devotees of God and Gurudev, let's now chant the sweet names of Bhagwan Shri Ram. Let's sing about Bhagwan Shri Ram and Bhagwan Shri Krishna. त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम, द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम. Jagadguru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj says, in the age of Treta, he came as Ram. In the age of Dwapar, the same Lord came to earth as Shyam, Krishna. Treta mein Sita bane Ram, Dwapar mein Shyama bane Shyam. In Treta, Ram and Sita were one and the same. In Dwapar, Shyam and Shyama were one. So let's sing with love and devotion. त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम,
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 द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में सीता बने राम,
त्रेता में सीता बने राम।
त्रेता में सीता बने राम,
त्रेता में सीता बने राम।
द्वापर में श्यामा बने श्याम,
द्वापर में श्यामा बने श्याम।
द्वापर में श्यामा बने श्याम,
द्वापर में श्यामा बने श्याम।
त्रेता में
राम,
त्रेता में
राम,
त्रेता में
राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम,
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में सुधो मुकुट राम,
त्रेता में सुधो मुकुट राम।
त्रेता में सुधो मुकुट राम,
त्रेता में सुधो मुकुट राम।
द्वापर में टेढ़ो मुकुट श्याम,
द्वापर में टेढ़ो मुकुट श्याम।
द्वापर में टेढ़ो मुकुट श्याम,
द्वापर में टेढ़ो मुकुट श्याम।
त्रेता में
राम,
त्रेता में
राम,
त्रेता में
राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम,
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में अति गंभीर राम,
त्रेता में अति गंभीर राम।
त्रेता में अति गंभीर राम,
त्रेता में अति गंभीर राम।
द्वापर में अतिशय चपल श्याम,
द्वापर में अतिशय चपल श्याम।
द्वापर में अतिशय चपल श्याम,
द्वापर में अतिशय चपल श्याम।
त्रेता में
राम,
त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम,
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम,
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में सीता सेव्य राम,
त्रेता में सीता सेव्य राम।
त्रेता में सीता सेव्य राम,
त्रेता में सीता सेव्य राम।
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम,
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम।
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम,
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम।
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम।
द्वापर में श्यामा दास श्याम।
त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में लक्ष्मण भ्रात राम।
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 द्वापर में दाऊ भ्रात श्याम।
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 त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में आए अवध राम।
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 द्वापर में आए ब्रजधाम श्याम।
द्वापर में आए
द्वापर में आए ब्रजधाम श्याम।
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 त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में धारे धनुष राम।
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 द्वापर में धारे मुरली श्याम।
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 त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
त्रेता में धारे नेम राम।
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 द्वापर में धारे प्रेम श्याम।
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 त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
दो पूर्ण काम है श्याम राम।
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 दो है कृपालु एक राम श्याम।
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 त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
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 त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
त्रेता में जोई बनी आए राम।
द्वापर में सोई बनी आए श्याम।
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 बोलिए राघवेंद्र सरकार की जय। यादवेंद्र सरकार की जय। मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार मम प्रिय सुई नंद कुमार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार।
सब लोग गाइए।
मम प्रिय सुई नंद कुमार
जो मोर मुकुट सिरधार जेहि लटकारी घुंघरार
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 जेहि मृगमद तिलक लीलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि मृगमद तिलक लीलार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि मृगमद तिलक लीलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि मृगमद तिलक लीलार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
जो कानन कुंडल धार जो कानन कुंडल धार जेहि नैनन अति रत्नार
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 जेहि चितवनी जादूडार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि चितवनी जादूडार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि चितवनी जादूडार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि चितवनी जादूडार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
नासा बेसरधार, जो नासा बेसरधार, जेहि मुख मुरली रिझवार।
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 जेहि मृदु मुस्कनि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि मृदु मुस्कनि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि मृदु मुस्कनि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि मृदु मुस्कनि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जो उर पीतांबर धार, जो उर पीतांबर धार, जेहि गर मणि मुक्तन हार।
जो उर पीतांबर धार, जेहि गर मणि मुक्तन हार।
जो उर पीतांबर धार, जेहि गर मणि मुक्तन हार।
जो उर पीतांबर धार, जेहि गर मणि मुक्तन हार।
जेहि गर बनमाल निहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि गर बनमाल निहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि गर बनमाल निहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि गर बनमाल निहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार, मम सखा श्याम सरकार। मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार, मम सखा श्याम सरकार। मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जो दो कर कंकण धार, जेहि कटी किंकिणी छविदार।
जो दो कर कंकण धार, जेहि कटी किंकिणी छविदार।
जो दो कर कंकण धार, जेहि कटी किंकिणी छविदार।
जो दो कर कंकण धार, जेहि कटी किंकिणी छविदार।
जेहि काछनी कछि रिझवार, जेहि काछनी कटी रिझवार। मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि काछनी कटी रिझवार, मम प्रिय
जेहि काछनि कटि रिझवार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि काछनि कटि रिझवार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जो कटि पीतांबर धार, जो कटि पीतांबर धार, जेहि पग नूपुर झनकार।
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 जेहि चरण कमल, जेहि चरण कमल बलिहार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि चरण कमल बलिहार,
Everyone sing and
मम
clap.
प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि चरण कमल बलिहार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि चरण कमल बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार, मम सखा श्याम सरकार, मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार, मम सखा श्याम सरकार, मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जो राधा प्राणाधार, जेहि तन सुख घन साकार।
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 जेहि छवि लखी छवि बलिहार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि छवि लखी छवि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि छवि लखी छवि बलिहार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि छवि लखी छवि बलिहार, मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जो सखिन प्राण साकार, जो सखिन प्राण साकार, जेहि अंश सबे अवतार।
जो सखिन प्राण साकार, जेहि अंश सबे अवतार।
जेहि अंश सबे अवतार।
जेहि अंश सबे अवतार।
जेहि तनु बह ब्रजरस धार, मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार।
जेहि तनु बह ब्रजरस धार,
बह ब्रज रस धार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
जेहि तनु बह ब्रज रस धार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
जो दीनन को रखवार जो दीनन को रखवार जेहि पायो नहीं को पार
जो दीनन को रखवार जेहि पायो नहीं को पार
जो दीनन को रखवार जेहि पायो नहीं को पार
जो दीनन को रखवार जेहि पायो नहीं को पार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार
मम सोई कृपालु सरकार जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
जेहि विधि हरिहर गए हार मम सोई कृपालु सरकार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रजराज दुलार मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम स्वामी प्राणाधार मम सखा श्याम सरकार मम सुत ब्रज राज दुलार मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम पिय सोई नंद कुमार
मम प्रिय सोई नंद कुमार
बोलिए वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय सियावर रामचंद्र सरकार की जय श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की जय Devotional listeners, now I request your full attention as we continue with the topic of Ram and Ramayana. As we walk on the path of devotion, we are often discouraged and we sometimes become despondent because our mind does not behave. We become very distracted by the world. And we know that the mind is the only one that practices devotion. We know by now with the grace of our Gurudev, Jagat Guru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj, we know that if the mind is not involved, then we are not practicing devotion. We know what the Ramayana says. Jap tap niyam yog nij dharma, shruti sambhav nana shubh karma, ज्ञान दया दम तीरथ मज्जन, जहाँ लगी धर्म कहे श्रुति सज्जन, आगम निगम पुराण अनेका, पढ़े सुने कर फल प्रभु एका, तब पद पंकज प्रीति निरंतर, सब साधन कर यह फल सुंदर. We know by now that whether we are doing jap, taking the holy beads in our hands and letting each bead pass through our fingers, slipping through our fingers, while we chant internally, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Whether we're doing jap or tap, tapashcharya, penance, well, actually, hardly anyone in Kali Yuga is physically able to do tap. In the olden days, in Satyug, people did very austere penance, such as Hiranyakashipu. He stood on one toe, not just on one foot, one toe, for 100 divine years. With his arms above his head, with his neck facing the sky, he stood like that for 100 divine years, years of the Devtas, doing penance. He did not eat anything. He was in the beginning eating leaves and such, fruits and such. Then he gave even those up, and then he was drinking water, and eventually he gave up even water. He performed severe, austere penance. So whether we are doing jap or tap, whether we are chanting the names of God or bathing in the holy waters of the Ganga or Yamuna, whether we are fasting or reading from the scriptures, the purpose of all this is to fall in love with God. So if we are doing all of this and not falling in love with God, then what is the purpose? Because simply reading the scriptures, that is not what devotion is. Simply fasting once a week is not what devotion is. Bathing in the holy waters is not what devotion is. We know by now that devotion is done by the mind, and all of these, jap, tap, yog, following the path of yog or gyan, all of these are mere helpers in devotion, or you can say these are the means of practicing devotion. When you're doing these, the end result should be that tava pada pankaj priti nirantar, that you have fallen in love with the lotus feet of Bhagwan Shri Ram. But if that has not happened, then of what use is all this? So we know that mind is the performer of every action. Mind is the reason behind bondage to this material world, and mind is the reason behind liberation from it. Man eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. Panchadashi says that mind is the only reason behind bondage and liberation. We also know what the Bhagavatam says. In the Bhagavad, the story is told about Prahlad, the great devotee Prahlad. His father was the mighty demon Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was doing penance, standing on one toe for 100 divine years, desirous of a boon from Brahma. After 100 divine years, he managed to please Brahmaji, and Brahmaji gave him a boon. And Hiranyakashipu returned to his kingdom and to his family, thinking erroneously that he had secured the boon for immortality. He had not. Then he saw for the first time, he saw his little son, Prahlad. So with great affection, fatherly affection, he picked Prahlad up and he placed him on his lap, and placing his hand passing his hand on Prahlad's head, he said very lovingly, he said, "Beta, my son, what do you like to do?" Prahlad said, "Father, I like to practice devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam." Prahlad told his father about the 9 ways in which he likes to practice devotion. And these 9 ways have become very famous as Navadha Bhakti, 9-fold devotion. Prahlad said, "Father, I like to go off by myself into the woods and I like to practice devotion in these 9 ways. Shravanam, I like to hear the glories of God. Kirtanam, I like to chant, I like to sing bhajans and kirtans. Jai Jai Narayan, Narayan, Hari Hari. Teri leela Prabhu hai, Nyari Nyari, Hari Hari. Jai Jai Narayan, Narayan, Hari Hari." As Prahlad is saying this, Hiranyakashipu is getting very angry. "Father, I like to do Smaranam Bhakti. I like to meditate on Bhagwan. I like to think of Bhagwan. I like to do Pada Sevanam. I like to serve the lotus feet of my Lord. I like to do Archana, Vandana. I love to think myself to be his servant, his humble servant. I love to serve him as his humble servant. I love to think of him as my eternal friend, Sakha. And Atmanivedanam, I love to surrender fully to him. That is what I like to do. I offer myself fully to my Lord." So this is Navadha Bhakti. Prahlad has told the world about Navadha Bhakti, 9 types of devotion. Out of these, 3 are the main ones. These are the ones that he mentions first. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Dhyanam, or Smaranam, or Chintanam. Hearing the glory of God, chanting the names and pastimes of God, and meditating on God, doing Roop Dhyan. And when asked, is there one devotion that I can do and that would be enough? Then the answer came, yes, you just have to do one bhakti, and that is Smaranam Bhakti. With your mind, think lovingly of your Lord. And that is enough. You don't have to do anything else, because the other 8 are helpful. They are helpers in doing this main devotion, Smaranam Bhakti. With our Gurudev's grace, we know all this. We know that the mind is the one that practices devotion. So when our mind goes here and there, we become despondent. And then we say, "Oh, man lagta nahi. My mind is not taking interest in devotion. So what should I do?" Jagatguru Shri Kripalu ji Maharaj, his words are very encouraging. They fill us with hope. They shed new light where there was darkness. Shri Maharaj ji says in Radha Govind Geet, "Hari mein na lage man, Govind Radhe, jani kahu bar bar, man ko laga de. Jani kahu bar bar, man ko laga de." Shri Maharaj ji says, don't say again and again that your mind doesn't delight in thinking of God. Don't say that again and again. Then what should I do? Man ko laga de. Work actively on focusing the mind on God. Quite often we say, in Hindi, we say, man lagta nahi. That means, my mind does not become attached to God. So Shri Maharajji's answer to that is, it won't automatically become attached to God. Lagega nahi, lagana hoga. You will have to actively work on taking the mind to God. You will have to work on attaching the mind to God. It won't happen automatically. There is nothing in the world, there's nothing that we've done in life that has happened automatically. Nothing. So why would this happen automatically? We will have to work at taking the mind to God. We will have to practice diligently and on a daily basis. Not just sometimes, but on a daily basis. And what will really help us to take our mind to God is bhajan and kirtan. The holy name of God is instrumental. It is instrumental for us. When we take the name of God, it becomes easier for our mind to do Roop Dhyan. And so the practice of Sankirtan, loud chanting, it has been hailed by the Vedas, the eternal Vedas. Some people say or think that this Sankirtan movement, this tradition of chanting loudly, it started maybe a while ago or maybe a few hundred years ago. Many people think that chanting, I don't like to do chanting, it's not an eternal practice told by the Vedas. It started maybe a few hundred years ago, I think with Gauranga Mahaprabhu. It is true that Gauranga Mahaprabhu revived the Sankirtan movement, but he didn't start it. When did this tradition start? There was never a time when this tradition was not, because the Vedas recommend that we chant the names of God. The Vedas are eternal. Therefore, the practice of Sankirtan is an eternal one. Sadate nama swayasho vivakmi. Rigved says, my Lord, I always chant your glorious names. Kindly grace me. The Vedas have recommended chanting of the holy name. Adyagamad yadishravat sahasrani rutibhi. The Vedas say, cry out to God, call out to Him with tears in your eyes, and He'll come running to you. He will come running to you with arms outstretched to embrace you. And as far as the hierarchy of Sanatan Vedic Dharma scriptures is concerned, we have no doubt, we have the Vedas first. They are the highest authority on knowledge. Ananta Param Gambhiram. These Vedas are extremely deep. Durvigahyam Samudravat. They're like an ocean of knowledge. The only difference is, only problem with this analogy is that the ocean is limited. The Vedas are unlimited. So the Vedas are the ultimate authority on knowledge, and then we have the Upanishads, which are part of the Vedas. We have then the 18 Purans, composed by Bhagwan Vedavyas, like Narad Puran, Shiv Puran, Garuda Puran, Devi Bhagwat Puran, Markandeya Puran, the most well-known being Bhagwat Mahapuran, sometimes referred to as Bhagwatam, sometimes as simply Bhagwat, sometimes Srimad Bhagwat. It's all the same scripture. The greatest of all Purans is the Bhagwat Puran. We have then the two historical scriptures, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Then we have the Gita, which is part of the Mahabharata scripture. And we have so many other scriptures. So after the Vedas, we go to the Purans, and the Purans recommend that we, people living in Kali Yuga, that we embrace the practice of chanting the holy name. Hare Namaiva नामैव नामैव मम जीवनम कलौ नास्त्येव 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 गतिरन्यथा. Skanda Puran. The Supreme Lord says, O people, O my children living in Kali Yuga, you must chant the name of God. Chant my name, chant my name, chant my name. There is no other way of reaching me. In Kali Yuga, there is no other way of reaching me. There is no other way, no other way. 3 times he says, chant my name. 3 times he says, there is no other way. The Ramayana, at so many different places, praises the practice of Sankirtan. In the Ramayana, Tulsidas ji says that the name of Ram is even greater than Ram. कहाँ कहाँ लगी नाम बढ़ाई, राम ना सकई नाम गुण गाई. Tulsidas ji goes to the extent of saying that even the Supreme Lord, Bhagwan Shri Ram, does not know the glory of his name. His name is so powerful that even Bhagwan Shri Ram doesn't know the glory of his name. Ram bhalu kapi katak batora, setu hetu shram kinh na thora. When Bhagwan Shri Ram was building a bridge to Lanka, he took the help of bears and monkeys. And he made many efforts to make that bridge, construct that bridge, Setu. But his name is so powerful that Naam let bhav sindhu sukhahi, karahu vichar sujan man mahi. But his name is so great that by taking the shelter of his name, countless souls have crossed the ocean of Maya. The ocean of Maya can be crossed simply by taking the shelter of the holy name. Tulsidas ji says, O good people of the world, think about this. Who is greater, Ram or the name of Ram? His name is so powerful. He lives in his name. Shri Maharaj ji often says, Naam mein Nami rehta hai. Nami aru naam saman maan. Nami aru naam. Nami is the one whose name we are taking, God, and his naam, his name. They are saman, they are both equal. Bhagwan Shri Ram lives in his name. The name of a worldly person is different. We don't live in our name. Our name of a worldly person is jad, it is insentient. It has no life, naturally. But the name of Ram is not like that. Because Bhagwan Shri Ram dwells in his name with all his powers. He lives in his name with all his powers. So, when we take his name, he can hear us. But he responds only if we are taking the name with love. No matter where we are, if we take his name, he listens to us, he hears us. Because he is right in his name. So for people of Kali Yuga, the practice of devotion has become, for us, the practice of devotion has become very easy. God has given us the easiest possible method. And that is by chanting his name. That's all we have to do. Chant his name. Only chant his name? No, chant his name with love. We must chant, but with love. Gauranga Mahaprabhu says in his Ashtapadi, in his 8 verses, which are like a whole ocean full of knowledge in 8 verses, he says, Naam namakari bahudha Nij sarva shaktis tatrarpita Niyamitah smaranena kala Etadrishi tava kripa bhagavan mamapi durdaiva drisha janina anuragaha. He says, "O Shri Krishna, you are so merciful that you have provided us with your countless names. Kam Brahma, Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha, A, B, C, D, all are your names. Ka means Brahma. A means Akaro Vasudeva, Shri Krishna. U means Umapati, Mahadev, Shri Shankar Bhagwan. Every consonant and every vowel of every language of the world is indeed your name. And you are living in each and every one of your names, you're living in them with all your powers. And I take your name, I chant your name, but I'm not seeing any difference. My heart is not changing, it's not transforming, I'm the same as before. There is no change within me, despite the fact that I am chanting your glorious name. Why? Mahaprabhuji says, it is my great misfortune that I'm not benefiting from taking your name. Why? He himself gives the answer by saying, Janinanuragaha. I don't have any love for you. I do utter your name, I do chant your name, I sing your glories, but I do it mechanically. Shri Maharaj used to often say to us, don't sing from here. Don't sing just from your throat. Sing from here. Sing from your heart. Pour your love into that chanting. That is how you chant. So Mahaprabhuji says, I don't have any anurag, meaning love for you. I chant your names mechanically. This means that we need to add something to the name of God as we chant His name. We need to add a lot of love to it. God is a slave of love. Bhagwan Shri Ram only wants one thing from us, and that is love. The world wants us to do duty towards it, but God says, don't do duty towards me. Don't just as a duty, just go to the mandir, come to towards my deity and go through the motions of performing arti, or just going like this, bowing down, doing full body prostration. Don't just do duty towards me. I don't want your duty, I want your love. Reserve that duty for the world, for your family members, where every wife wants the husband to do his duty towards her and vice versa. He wants her to do her duty towards him, towards the family. Every child wants parents to fulfill their duties towards a child. Parents also want children to do their duty towards them. God says, don't do duty towards me, give me your love. So when we chant His names, we must do it with love. He responds. He responds to love. So Roop Dhyan becomes extremely important. Roop Dhyan. Not just meditation, which is a buzzword today. I meditate. Do you meditate? I meditate. How do you meditate? Oh, I keep a candle in front of me. Then I look at the flame and I just keep looking. I meditate like that. How do you meditate? I just concentrate on my breath. I'm inhaling, exhaling, in and out, and that's how I meditate. How do you meditate? I meditate on my third eye. That's how I meditate. Some people meditate they write the name Ram, and they meditate on just that name. They have the written name and they meditate on that. There's so many different types of meditation people are doing. But Jagat Guruttam Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj has told the world about the most effective form of meditation, and he has coined the beautiful term Roop Dhyan. Roop Dhyan. Meditation, loving meditation on the divine form of Bhagwan Shri Ram, Bhagwan Shri Krishna. Without Roop Dhyan, our chanting, it has no benefit. We don't feel any benefit. We don't experience any benefit if we're not doing Roop Dhyan. With Rup Dhyan, we experience the power of his name. And we know that if we are doing Rup Dhyan, we are experiencing that power that is in God's name. Tears come to the eyes, the body gets goosebumps, voice gets choked with loving emotion. And this is what Bhagwan Shri Ram, this is how he wants us to chant his names. Bhagwan Shri Ram says in the Ramayana, in other words, through Tulsi Das Ji, he says, Mam gun gavat pulak sarira, gad gad gira nayan bahanira. When you sing my bhajans and kirtans, then you should get goosebumps on your skin. You should have a lump in your throat. Your voice should catch in your throat. You should not be able to take my name properly. And there should be tears flowing from your eyes. Your eyes should be shedding tears. A devotee told me that when he first heard Shri Maharaj Ji and when he first went to have Maharaj Ji's darshan in Mangar, and when he heard Maharaj Ji singing, he thought that Maharaj Ji did not know music. And I asked him, what made you think that Maharaj Ji didn't know any music? He said, because when he sang, then his voice would catch, it was different. And I thought he didn't know music. But then later I found out that it is because he is so affected by taking the name of God that he could not chant properly. He just could not sing properly. Shri Maharaj Ji would shed tears profusely. There was no end to those tears. And he would tremble, he would have tremors. And his voice would change, his face would become pale, he would fall to the ground unconscious. He would go into a state of divine ecstasy. He could not chant properly for this reason, and devotees would have to then start chanting because Shri Maharaj Ji could not. That was because of the love with which he was chanting. And we could all feel that power, that love that he was feeling. Just because of his presence in that sadhana hall, we could all feel that the power of that love that he was experiencing. Bhagwan Ram says, take my name in this way, so that you start crying with love for me. Your body here rises. In other words, you get goosebumps and there's a lump in your throat. That is only possible if we are doing Rup Dhyan. Let's continue after doing a little bit more Sankirtan. Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe
Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda Govinda Govinda, Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda,
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा 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 राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
राधे गोविंदा
Radhe Govinda,
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 Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda,
Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda.
बोलिए श्री राधा कृष्ण भगवान की जय. There are people in the world who perform pujas, who do yagyas, but they do not chant the name of God. Or perhaps they chant the names of God, but they also do puja, they also perform havans, yagyas. There was a man who lived in India, and he had memorized the entire Tulsikrit Ramayana, Ramcharitmanas. That is quite impressive. Shri Maharaj Ji was a Jagat Guru. He had become Jagat Guru, so it was after 1957. And Shri Maharaj Ji decided to grace this man. He visited him, but in plain clothes. And when the man saw Shri Maharaj Ji, he thought, that looks like Jagat Guru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj. But no, I don't think that's him. Shri Maharaj Ji did not say who he was. He simply asked, so I have heard you have memorized the entire Ramayana. Yes, yes. And he said, Bacha. Yes, child, I have memorized the entire Ramayana. Now, before Shri Maharaj Ji met with this man, Maharaj Ji was waiting for him because he was told that this gentleman was doing puja. In his room, he was doing puja, he was busy. So Shri Maharaj Ji said, I shall wait. When he saw Shri Maharaj Ji asked him, so you memorized the entire Ramayana? And he said, yes, I have. Shri Maharaj Ji said, well, you know the Ramayana then. And then you know what the Ramayana says. Yes. Ehi kali kal na. Shri Maharaj Ji started with this chapai and the gentleman finished it. Ehi kali kal na sadhan duja, jog na jap tap vrat makh puja. He's saying it that in Kali Yuga, you cannot attain God by doing puja. Shri Maharaj Ji then recited another chaupai or verse from the Ramayana, which also meant the same. And the gentleman finished the chaupai. Shri Maharaj Ji would start it, he would finish it. Many chaupais like this, Shri Maharaj Ji recited many of them, and the gentleman finished. He concluded them. So Shri Maharaj Ji said, but you know the Ramayana. You have memorized it. So you know, in the age of Kali, in Kali Yuga, the only way to attain God is by lovingly chanting His names. And this gentleman, he was flustered. He said, who is this young man? He's a student, I think, perhaps a college student. Perhaps he's an atheist. He's come to make trouble for me. So he dismissed Shri Maharaj Ji. But the very next day, the same fellow was going to listen to the lecture of Jagat Guru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj. So he was very excited. He sat in the front row. He was waiting for Jagat Guru Ji Maharaj to come to have his darshan. And when Shri Maharaj Ji came on the stage, this man was looking. His eyes were wide open. Oh, he's the one who visited me yesterday. And I called him Bacha. I called him a child. He is Jagat Guru, and I called him a child. He's so young. And I did not know that he had come to grace me. He is so right. I know the Ramayana. I recite the Ramayana. I have memorized the Ramayana, but I don't know the Ramayana. There's so many chapais that I recite, and they mean that, and the meaning of all those chapais is that in the age of Kali, the only way to effectively practice devotion to Bhagwan is by chanting the holy name. What am I doing with puja, with Vedic puja and so on? That is not this is not the recommended method for this age. So the man finally understood that Shri Maharaj had gone to him to grace him, not some atheist who had gone to make trouble for him. And he apologized profusely later on, with tears in his eyes. The Ramayana says, Krit jug sab jogi vigyani, kari hari dhyan tarahi bhav prani, treta vividh yagya nar karahi, prabhu hi samarpi karma bhav tarahi, dwapar kari raghupati pad puja, nar bhav tariya upaya न दूजा, कलि जुग केवल नाम आधारा, सुमिरी सुमिरी नर उतरहि पारा. In Krita Yuga, Satyug, the recommended method was to silently sit and meditate on God. And you could do it because in Satyug, people's minds are very pure. So you could just sit and meditate on God. There was no problem. But then came Treta Yuga. And with Treta Yuga, now in Treta Yuga, people's minds were not so pure. So they found it harder to meditate on God. So God says, all right, you people of Treta Yuga, you now try to focus your mind on me by doing yagyas, havan. Then came Dwapar Yuga. And now again the situation worsened. So Bhagwan said, you do puja. You do ritualistic puja, and by doing that, you will attach your mind to me. Then came Kali Yuga, the worst of all ages. Our mind is the worldliest in this age, in this era. So Bhagwan said, I need to give you the easiest method, and that is chanting of the holy name. Doing puja is not wrong. How can it be wrong? Doing yajna is not wrong. How can it be wrong? But the whole point is that these methods are not very effective in this age, in Kali Yuga. Bhagwan himself has said that in this age, the only effective method to reach me is by chanting my holy name. So that is what we should decide upon. This is the most effective method. And then there's some people who say that, yes, we chant the name of God, and Ajamil uttered the name of God. He said Narayan on his deathbed, and because he said Narayan, he went to Vishnu Dham. He went to Vaikunt. But it didn't happen like that. Not understanding the story of Ajamil, people then started thinking, I just have to utter the name of God on my deathbed like Ajamil did, and I will go there to Vishnu Dham. It doesn't happen like that. Ajamil was a very great devotee of God. He had elderly parents that he served very diligently. He had a wife, and he was a very good husband to his wife, and he was a very good father to his children. But one day, because of one moment's kusang, he left his family. He took up with a prostitute, started living with her, had many children with her. And it is all in the Bhagavad. And he lived like that for many years. He stopped caring for his parents, renounced his very virtuous wife, and stopped taking care of his children, and he lived another life. And many, many years passed, he forgot all about God. And then one day when he was on his bed, he was laying down, he had a dream-like experience. It wasn't a dream, it was a very real experience. Ajamil saw that the messengers of Vishnu, messengers of Yamaraj, the god of death, came to claim him. But the messengers of Vishnu came from the other side, and they stopped the messengers of Yamaraj. They said, no, it is not his time to die. Yamaraj's servant said, no, it is his time to die. We have come to claim him. No. Vishnu Dut said no. So there was a very fierce battle, and Vishnu Dut, messengers of Vishnu, defeated the messengers of Yamaraj. And Ajamil did not die. But he awakened. Not just physically, but spiritually he awakened. And he thought, what has become of me? I was practicing devotion to God so diligently, and one moment's kusang took me so far down. He became very contrite and he went to Haridwar for 1 full year. He practiced uninterrupted devotion, and then he went to Vaikunt. What I forgot to mention in this story is something you all know, and that is that Ajamil thought he was dying, and he said Narayan. Narayan was his youngest son's name. Because he was attached to his youngest son the most, he called out to Narayan. Narayan happens to be God's name. And so people said, he said Narayan, and God called him to his divine abode. But if that were true, that would be the biggest miracle of all, don't you think? That would be the biggest miracle. It didn't happen like that. It is only through the practice of devotion that Ajamil finally went to Vaikuntha Lok. It is not by just simply uttering the name of God. So we should not be under any confusion or delusion that just by chanting the name of God, we can reach God. Some people say when you chant the name of God at the moment of death, the Gita says that Shri Krishna promises that the one who chants his name in the final moment will go to him. And indeed, Shri Krishna does say, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati tyajandeham sayati paramangatim. The one who remembers me at the final moment of life will come to me. Of this, there's no doubt. There's no sanshaya, there's no doubt that he will come to me. But consider what happens at the end of life. What happens before death comes is that there is a lot of pain. Before death comes, there's so much pain that it's like many, many scorpions biting at the same time. That pain is something which is intolerable. And because it is intolerable, we first lose consciousness. And then right after that comes death. So we said Ram, and then the pain came, and then we became unconscious, then we died. So at the last moment, we didn't say Ram, we didn't think of Ram, because we were unconscious. When Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, if you think of me at the last moment, you'll come to me, this is referring to the saints who are always thinking of God, and they give up their body at will. Like Ajamil did when he practiced devotion for 1 year. After that, he willingly gave up his life and he gave up his body at will, and then went to Vaikuntha. So a saint gives up his body at will when he wants. Bhishma Pitama laid on a bed of arrows for 6 entire months before he decided that this is the auspicious moment to give up my body. And he did. So the saint who is not attached anywhere in the world, he is only attached to God. He has no attachments in the world. He's always thinking of God. So at the last moment, he doesn't faint. He doesn't lose consciousness. Because Yamraj does not come and take the soul out of the body. Yamraj rather comes and very respectfully says, Maharaj, it is your time to go. I have come to take you, and the vehicle is standing outside. But if you wish to go with me, please let me know. And if you wish to stay, that is your privilege. Please tell me what to do. I'm your servant. In this way, Yamraj respectfully takes him. So the saint does not lose consciousness. At the final moment, he is always thinking of God. We, ordinary people, should not think that we can utter the name of God at the final moment and we can go to God. Because at that moment, we will be unconscious. Fact is that the chanting that when we chant the names of God while doing Rup Dhyan, while thinking of Him, oh, Shri Krishna is coming towards me, and now He is sitting down, now I'm feeding Him with my own hands, now I am serving His lotus feet, now I am giving Him something to eat. You're doing Rup Dhyan like this. Now He is beside the Yamuna river, on the bank of the river, and he's with the gopis, he's with Radha Rani, and I am one of the gopis, and now Shri Krishna is playing hide and seek with his friends, now he is playing ball, now he's doing this. This kind of Roop Dhyan, very dynamic Roop Dhyan, not static. This is what we need to do. We need to chant the names of God, the glory of God, the pastimes of God, and that will help us to think of Him. And when we do Roop Dhyan and then chant the names of God, that is a very powerful combination, and that will take the mind to God very easily. It is easier than anything else. It is the easiest method that God has given to us. So, chanting the name of God is the only method which is prescribed by the scriptures, and that chanting by itself does not take us anywhere, but combine it with Roop Dhyan and it becomes very powerful. Our mind goes to God. We could be sitting here, right here, but our mind has gone to Vrindavan, it's gone to Saket Lok, it's gone to Golok, it has gone to the abode of God. Our mind then becomes Vrindavan, our mind becomes Gokul, our mind becomes Barsana, our mind becomes Mangar, our mind becomes the Guru Dham, because we are doing Roop Dhyan. No matter where we are in the world, we will always be with God. So we become very despondent from time to time when our mind doesn't behave. In fact, quite often we become despondent and we think, my mind, it just doesn't behave. But Jagadguru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj says, you have to work hard so that the mind will behave. And the hard work consists of daily routine of bhajan and kirtan while doing Roop Dhyan. That is the instruction of God in the scriptures, right from Vedas to the Ramayana. I will leave this topic now, and I will continue with the topic of Ram and Ramayana tomorrow. Boliye Vrindavan Bihari Lal ki jai, Siyavar Ramchandra ki jai, Srimad Sadguru Sarkar ki jai, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.